1. The illusion of infinite time. The modern obsession with productivity rests on an unspoken assumption that if we try hard enough, we can eventually get everything under control. We can clear the inbox, finish all the tasks, plan our weeks perfectly, and then, finally, have time left over for what really matters. It's a seductive idea, one that feeds a billion-dollar industry of time management tools, digital planners, and productivity hacks. But at its core is a dangerous illusion, the belief that time is infinite, or at least that could be bent to our will. We live in a culture that treats time as an abstract resource to be optimized. We speak about spending time, saving time, wasting time, as if time were money in a bank account, something that could be accumulated or stretched with enough cleverness. But time doesn't work like that. Every person is given roughly 4,000 weeks in a lifetime. That's it. And trying to outsmart this limitation with tricks and hacks doesn't liberate us. It traps us in a cycle of anxiety and dissatisfaction. Take the endless chase of inbox zero as an example. The idea is that by staying on top of your emails, you gain clarity and control. But the reality for many is that the faster you reply, the more replies you generate. Every task completed invites another. Rather than feeling accomplished, many people feel more overwhelmed the more efficiently they work. The system rewards speed, not presence, output, not depth. This belief in limitless time also seeps into how we think about life ambitions. There's an unspoken pressure to do everything, build a career, travel the world, maintain perfect relationships, raise children, write a novel, learn a language, stay fit. The idea is that if you just manage your time well enough, you can fit it all in. But this mindset turns life into a spreadsheet of goals, each vying for limited attention. And when the math doesn't work, because it never truly does, we blame ourselves for failing to manage time effectively. Recognizing the finitude of life isn't pessimism. It's clarity. When we accept that we can't do everything, we begin to ask better questions. What really matters? What will I make space for? Knowing that time is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be honored. The irony is that it's only by confronting our limits that we begin to live more freely. Not because we gain control, but because we stop pretending we need to. Point 2. Choosing what to neglect. Time management is often sold as a way to do more. Fit in the morning run, reply to every message, crush the to-do list, and still have time for mindfulness and a side project. But in reality, managing time, well, has very little to do with squeezing more in. It's about choosing what to leave out. The uncomfortable truth is that every decision to do something is a decision not to do something else. There's no escaping this. No app or strategy can give you more than 24 hours in a day. Real-time management starts when you accept that you simply can't do it all, and then make peace with what won't get done. This means that saying yes to anything meaningful requires saying no to many other things that might also seem valuable. There's no neat trick for this. It often feels like loss. Choosing to focus deeply on a creative project may mean letting go of staying perfectly up to date with industry news. Spending more time with family might mean scaling back your ambitions for rapid career advancement. These aren't easy trade-offs, but they are necessary ones. Neglect, then, isn't failure. It's strategy, but must be intentional. The danger lies in unconscious neglect, letting the most important things slip through the cracks because your day was filled with low-priority tasks that felt urgent. This is why to-do lists balloon endlessly. They're rarely filtered by true importance. Without clear boundaries, the trivial consumes the essential. To begin choosing what to neglect, start with a question: what am I willing to fail at in order to succeed at what matters most? It's not rhetorical. If you're unwilling to fail at being perfectly responsive on email, you may have to accept being mediocre at focused creative work. If you're unwilling to neglect shallow social obligations, your closest relationships might suffer. Saying no, firmly and without apology, is often the hardest part. It requires more than time management. It requires clarity of purpose. Without a sense of what truly matters to you, It's nearly impossible to resist the endless stream of incoming requests and opportunities. But with that clarity, saying no becomes less about rejection and more about affirmation. You're not just closing a door, you're keeping one open to what matters most. In a world that encourages saying yes to everything, the real skill is knowing what you're willing to walk away from. Point 3. The trap of efficiency. Efficiency promises freedom. It offers the appealing idea that if you just get faster, answer emails quicker, process tasks in batches, optimize your routines, you'll eventually create space. But what actually happens in most cases is the opposite. The more efficient you become, the more you're expected to do. Time saved doesn't become time reclaimed. It becomes time reassigned. This is known as the efficiency trap. You answer your inbox with lightning speed, and now people email you more, expecting immediate responses. You finish your work early, and more tasks land in your lap. In a culture that prizes output, efficiency doesn't buy you freedom, it raises the bar. And the better you are at handling more, the more will be handed to you. The deeper problem is that this cycle creates a chronic sense of not having enough time, even when you're accomplishing more than ever. The faster you move, the more behind you feel. There's always another update, another workflow, another strategy that promises to help you stay afloat. But instead of easing the pressure, these tools often reinforce it because they subtly suggest that the problem lies with your personal management, not with the impossible expectations being placed on you. Paradoxically, one of the most powerful things you can do is to resist the urge to be maximally efficient. Slowing down, focusing on one task at a time, and allowing room for delays or detours can feel counterintuitive in a culture obsessed with speed, but these choices often restore depth and presence. Inefficiency, in this context, isn't laziness. It's a form of intentionality. Consider writing a thoughtful letter by hand rather than sending a quick message. It takes longer, but it's not wasted time. That slowness can become part of the meaning. Or think about cooking a meal from scratch instead of ordering takeout. The extra effort isn't about productivity. It's about being embedded in the moment. Efficiency has its place. It can make routines smoother and free up mental energy. But when it becomes the lens through which all actions are judged, it distorts what time is for. The goal isn't to do everything faster. It's to ensure that what you're doing is worth your limited time in the first place. And sometimes that means choosing the slower road. Point 4. The problem with planning. Planning offers a sense of security. It reassures us that we're moving in the right direction, that the future is accounted for, that life is under control. But beneath that reassurance lies a fragile assumption that the future will unfold in ways that match our projections. More often than not, it doesn't. We make 5-year plans, career roadmaps, retirement goals. We schedule each day down to the quarter hour. Yet life resists prediction. Unexpected opportunities arise, people change, crises happen. The world doesn't bend to our calendars. And when our plans are disrupted, the disorientation isn't just logistical, it's existential. It threatens the story we've been telling ourselves about how life will go. This is where planning can turn from useful tool into coping mechanism. At its core, much of our over-planning stems from discomfort with uncertainty. It's a way to feel in control of something that can never be fully controlled. If the itinerary is detailed enough, if the goals are clear enough, maybe we won't have to confront the truth that time is slippery, that outcomes are never guaranteed. But this kind of control is an illusion. The future is unknowable by definition. That doesn't mean we shouldn't plan at all, but it suggests that plans should be held lightly. The point isn't to lock in the future, but to orient ourselves meaningfully in the present. There's a subtle difference between using a plan to guide action and using it to avoid anxiety. One keeps us grounded. The other can quietly disconnect us from life as it's actually happening. We might plan a perfect evening, but miss it in the moment because we're fixated on whether it's going according to plan. Or we outline the next 10 years with such precision that we leave no space for real-time discovery. A more resilient approach is to engage with life more directly, even if that means accepting periods of ambiguity. Rather than always asking, What's the next step? We might ask, what's happening now, and how can I meet it well? Instead of building a tower of expectations, we build the capacity to respond with presence. There's nothing wrong with looking ahead, but the most meaningful direction often comes not from projecting into the future, but from staying rooted in the only place we ever actually are, this moment. Plans may help, but presence is what lets us live. Point 5. Embracing finitude. We tend to treat life's limitations as obstacles to be overcome. There's a cultural impulse to stretch time, hack productivity, delay aging, and chase a sense of boundlessness. Underneath all of it is a quiet resistance to finitude, to the fact that life is short, that we can't do everything, and that we are ultimately mortal. But it's precisely those limitations that give life its shape. If time were endless, choices would carry less weight. Every path not taken would be easily revisited. Commitments could be postponed indefinitely. The urgency and poignancy of our lives come from the fact that they are bounded. Each decision becomes meaningful because to say yes to one thing is to say no to countless others. Our attention, energy, and years are limited, and that's not a flaw. It's the condition that makes meaning possible. Mortality, then, isn't something to be solved. It's not a scheduling problem or a challenge for biotech. It's the backdrop against which a human life unfolds. We often frame death as the ultimate failure, as if a well-lived life is one that escapes it for as long as possible. But this mindset tends to flatten experience, turning the present into a stepping stone for some imagined, more complete future that never quite arrives. To embrace finitude is not to give in to nihilism. It's the opposite. It means facing the truth that time is not just limited. It is ours to spend consciously, imperfectly, and with care. When we stop trying to outrun or deny our limits, we can begin to inhabit our lives more fully. We stop treating time as something to dominate and start experiencing it as something to live inside. This shift fosters a different kind of depth. You linger longer with a conversation because you're not rushing to the next item on the list. You let a moment stretch, not because it's efficient, but because it's enough. You choose more deliberately where to focus, what to pursue, who to be with, because you know you can't choose everything. There is freedom in limits if we're willing to see it. Not the freedom of infinite choice, but the freedom of being rooted, of knowing that this moment matters precisely because it won't last. That's not a reason for despair. It's a reason to pay attention. Point 6. The joy of missing out. The modern fear of missing out, the gnawing sense that there's always something better happening elsewhere, isn't new, but it's been amplified by the illusion that we can and should be everywhere, know everything, and say yes to every opportunity. At its root, FOMO is a refusal to accept that we are finite. It resists the fact that each moment spent doing one thing is a moment not spent doing 1,000 others. We scroll through social feeds and see curated glimpses of others' lives. The weekend trip we didn't take, the dinner we weren't invited to, the opportunity we passed up. And it stings, not because we genuinely wanted to be at all those events, but because we haven't fully accepted that we must miss out on most things. In fact, missing out isn't a glitch in life's design. It's how life works. Paradoxically, once we stop fighting this truth, it becomes freeing. Missing out is inevitable. You'll never read most books, meet most people, or visit most places. But this isn't a reason to despair. It's a chance to go deep instead of wide. When we embrace the joy of missing out, we begin to say, I'm choosing this, and in doing so, I'm letting go of everything else. That act of choosing and of sticking with a choice is where meaning lives. Think of a committed relationship, a long-term creative project, or a life anchored in a particular place. All of these involve enormous sacrifices, and yet they often bring richness precisely because of what they exclude. The depth comes not in spite of what's missed, but because of it. The idea isn't to eliminate the desire for more options, but to recognize that chasing endless possibility can dilute experience. A walk with a friend becomes fuller when you're not mentally skimming through other things you could be doing. A single book read slowly with attention may shape your thinking more than a dozen skimmed in a rush. Choosing fewer experiences more intentionally is not settling, it's living. The joy of missing out comes when we recognize that a well-lived life is defined not by how much we do, but by how deeply we do it. And that kind of depth only becomes possible when we stop trying to do it all. Point 7. The power of patience. In a culture obsessed with speed and instant gratification, patience can feel like an outdated virtue, quaint, inefficient, even indulgent. Yet some of the most meaningful aspects of human life require exactly that: time, consistency, and a tolerance for not knowing how it will all turn out. Whether it's building a career, raising a child, developing a skill, or growing a relationship, the deepest rewards often unfold on timelines that resist acceleration. This is not a coincidence. True achievements, those that shape us and leave a lasting mark, tend to be slow by nature. The writer who hones her craft over decades, the gardener who waits through seasons to see what flourishes, the teacher who watches students change year after year. These are not stories of quick wins. They are quiet demonstrations of what becomes possible when urgency is set aside in favor of trust and persistence. Impatience, on the other hand, is often a form of anxiety. It arises when we can't tolerate the discomfort of not having control, not seeing results, not knowing if we're making the right choice. We mistake slowness for stagnation, uncertainty for failure. And so we push, refresh, optimize, demand progress. But this pressure can backfire, especially when it's applied to areas of life that follow their own, slower rhythm. Philosophers like Soren Kierkegaard and thinkers throughout the contemplative traditions have long warned against the dangers of haste. Kierkegaard, for instance, observed that despair often hides behind a restless pursuit of outcomes, a refusal to simply be where one is. To live well, he argued, is to become reconciled with waiting, with not yet, with limitation. Patience, then, is not passivity. It's a discipline, a decision to stay engaged with the present without demanding that it immediately justify itself. It's saying, this might not yield results today, but I will keep showing up. This applies as much to creative work as it does to personal growth. There is no shortcut to depth, only the slow accumulation of attention over time. In a world that rewards urgency, patience can feel like resistance. And in a way, it is. It's a quiet refusal to let life be reduced to a series of quick outcomes. It's an act of faith that something worthwhile is growing, even if we can't see it yet. That kind of faith isn't naive. It's how most things worth doing actually get done. Point 8. Rediscovering leisure and presence. There was a time when leisure meant true rest. Time spent doing nothing in particular, or doing something slowly and without purpose beyond enjoyment. A Sunday walk. An afternoon spent reading without checking the clock. Sitting on a bench, simply watching the world pass by. Leisure was once a state of being, not a task to be optimized. Today, it often takes on a different character. Leisure has become performative, curated, and strangely productive. A vacation isn't complete without a string of Instagram-worthy moments. Hobbies are turned into side hustles. Even rest is treated as something to manage, tracked by apps, measured in REM cycles, planned in advance. The goal is not to experience rest, but to use it to recharge in order to be more effective later. This shift reflects a deeper problem. We've come to value ourselves primarily by our output. And so, even in our downtime, we're haunted by the sense that we should be doing something useful. A quiet afternoon feels wasteful. A weekend without plans triggers guilt. We confuse busyness with significance and mistake stimulation for satisfaction. But real leisure doesn't ask to be justified. It's worthwhile precisely because it serves no instrumental goal. It allows the mind to unfurl, to play, to breathe. It creates space for spontaneity and for noticing what's actually happening, both inside and around us. At the heart of this is attention. What we pay attention to shapes our experience of life. If attention is constantly fractured, pulled by notifications, multitasking, or inner restlessness, we lose the thread of the moment. We might be physically present, but mentally somewhere else. Leisure, in its truest form, is a practice of reclaiming that attention, of letting it settle, undirected, long enough to land on something real. This presence, however, doesn't come from trying harder. It's not about discipline or technique. It comes from loosening our grip on control, from stopping the constant attempt to squeeze value from every second. Paradoxically, the more we try to make the most of time, the more we risk missing it altogether. To rediscover leisure is to step off the treadmill of self-optimization and remember what it means to simply be. Not to achieve or improve or showcase, but to inhabit the moment with no expectation beyond itself. It's an act of trust that time is not only useful when it's filled, but also when it's simply allowed to unfold. Point 9. Time and the collective. For most of human history, time was something we shared. People rose with the sun, worked together in fields, paused for seasonal rituals, gathered at designated hours for meals, prayers, or markets. Time was social. It structured life in common rhythms, aligning individual routines with the pulse of the community. These shared patterns gave people a sense of connection, predictability, and place. That's changed. In modern life, time has become fragmented and individualized. We set personal calendars, work across time zones, and curate our own schedules with digital precision. This flexibility can be empowering, but it often isolates us. The freedom to choose how to spend time is frequently accompanied by the feeling of being out of sync with everyone else. The rhythms that once unified us have scattered into 1,000 personalized routines. This disconnection shows up in subtle but significant ways. Friends struggle to find time to meet because their availability never overlaps. Families eat at different times or in different rooms. Remote work stretches into evenings, even across weekends, dissolving the boundary between work and rest. Technology allows for near-constant access, but rarely shared presence. The sociologist Emil Durkheim argued that shared rituals, and the shared time they require, are essential to social cohesion. They ground us in something larger than ourselves. When we participate in collective time, whether it's a weekly dinner, a neighborhood event, or even just a group walk at lunch, we momentarily step out of the isolated logic of personal productivity and into something more relational, more human. The decline of communal time is not just a logistical problem, it's an existential one. When life is lived only on individual timelines, it's easy to lose perspective. Each person becomes the center of their own clock, and the pressure to manage time, well, becomes more acute. But when time is shared, the burden lightens. There's a rhythm to lean into, a sense of being held in a wider pattern. Reconnecting with communal time doesn't mean rejecting autonomy. It means rediscovering balance. It could be as simple as committing to a weekly gathering, syncing mealtimes with loved ones, or observing a personal Sabbath. Any practice that anchors individual life in shared rhythm. In a world that celebrates independence, shared time offers something quietly radical. A reminder that time isn't just something we use. It's something we belong to together. Point 10. Conclusion. To live a meaningful life with roughly 4,000 weeks is not to master time, but to come to terms with it. We don't get to bend it to our will, extend it endlessly, or organize it perfectly. But we do get to decide how to meet it, whether with resistance or with a kind of radical acceptance that opens up space for something deeper. Embracing limitation is the starting point. Not as a defeat, but as clarity. You can't do everything. You can't read every book, meet every expectation, or stay on top of every demand. But that's what gives your choices weight. When you let go of the fantasy that one day you'll get on top of it all, you make room for the life that's actually in front of you. Trying to force control over time often leads to distraction, stress, and a feeling of never being done. Living with time, rather than against it, means accepting that you're not in charge of how long things take or how they unfold. What you are in charge of is your attention, where you place it, who and what you give it to. This shift requires letting go of certain illusions. The perfect schedule, the flawless routine, the productivity system that will finally fix time. None of these are real solutions. What is real is this day, this moment, this limited span of life. And the fact that it's limited is what makes it valuable. So the real question isn't how to do more. It's how to do what matters. What would change if you stopped treating life like a problem to solve and started treating it like a conversation to enter into? What would you focus on if you stopped believing you could get it all done? Take a few moments to reflect. What are you currently postponing for some imagined later? What are you doing out of habit that no longer serves you? What are the few things, if you focused on them fully, that would actually feel like living? There's no master plan to follow, no guaranteed formula. But there's time, limited, yes, but real. And there is you, awake to the truth of it. The point was never to outrun time. The point is to meet it, live inside it, and choose again and again how to spend what little of it you've been given.